Good morning, everybody. Great to see so many faces. You know, I just thank you are keeping safe and well, that your loved ones are safe and well. I think one thing that we've all learned at this time, what we previously considered simple things really are. So I just hope that generally people are keeping well. And thank you so much for taking the time out today to join us for this member meeting and AGM. You're in for a real treat this morning. So just sort of first off, we've got an update from the Shadow Board, and we continue to be incredibly proud of what those guys are doing for us. So we're looking forward to hearing about what those guys are doing. And before that, I'm delighted that we have Marcia with us, Marcia Reid Fotheringham, who will be joining us in a more formal capacity from September as our new patron. So today is an excellent opportunity for you guys to get to know a little bit more about what Marcia is all about. You may wonder where our sort of current chair, John Fife, is. He sends his apologies. John's had a few sort of health issues to deal with recently, but he wanted to send his love and say hello to everybody. So without further ado, I shall hand you over to Marcia.
Good morning. You know how Ivan said you're going to learn a little bit about me? Well, you will and you won't. Some of what I'm going to be talking about is certainly about me. All of it is about what I believe. But the reality of learning about me means learning even more about my history and who I am and what makes me tick. The reality is you'll learn that as we go along, hopefully through the years, okay? Now, the problem with my speech this morning is that my words are simple. Simple words can be taken and discarded easily. I would ask you to understand that my words are like me saying I can run a marathon. But the reality is, if I were to do that, you'd know how impossible a task it is for me to do. So with that bit out of the way, when I thought about giving a motivational speech to you, I questioned the need. I mean, everyone in this audience will already be the cream of the crop. You're successful and you've been focused in your life, or you really wouldn't be part of the business cluster. So why do you need to be motivated? Why bother continuing to motivate yourself? If you're confident, you'll say, I'm already highly, highly motivated. I've got this. If you're not so confident, you'll say, okay, show me what you got. If you're like most, you'll be somewhere in between. So just for a touch of reality, no matter who you are, you, like me, and everyone around you, we all have feelings, personal wants, wishes, and goals, and currently, we've all been affected by COVID-19. I know that you, like me, will be in a place that always asks us to do our best. But what does that really mean? And what should you really do? We all know the importance of our current struggle, surviving this and the aftermath of the awful crisis. Most of us have had enough of the lockdown, enough of being at home, and lately, enough of the predictions of doom, which are supposedly coming. Some think there's little you can do about it. I say there's always something you can do. No matter what we choose to do, we are always either helping or hurting ourselves. So let's face facts. With or without the current crisis, you're living your life. But I think our job is to make this life your very best life. Obviously, we only have one. For some, it takes a crisis to remind us how important things are and how important people are. Sometimes it takes a crisis to remind us that we are important and that our priorities need to be re-identified, re-clarified, and ultimately fulfilled. For me, that happened in 1987. Now, some of you wouldn't have been born yet. For me, I was in my 30s, working my butt off in a too demanding but great job, and existing in what I would have said was a good but not excellent marriage. In the States, almost everyone has a yearly physical. It's just the norm. So that year, I went along for my physical, and within days, the doctor called me and said, listen, come on back for some additional tests. It could be nothing, or it could be something. Well, I knew I was healthy. I was going to the gym regularly. I had no unusual symptoms. My work as a senior manager and as a clinical psychologist was going really well. I was making money, and I felt that life was good. So I didn't worry. Actually, I really didn't worry until the following week, when in the most surreal way, I heard my doctor say, you have kidney cancer. I was sure he must be talking to somebody else, but I looked around the room and no one else was in the room besides me and the doctor. I was shocked. The doctor and I reviewed my options. I had been given options. I picked the choice that would give me my best chance. My left kidney had to go. I had never been sick since starting my work in life. Actually, I had never had a sick day and had not been in the hospital before. So as I lay on the gurney, which here means the bed, waiting for the pre-op drugs to kick in, I made deals with whoever I thought was responsible for all of our lives and all that happens to us. Some would say that was God. Some would say it's the universe. All I knew was it was someone or something of a higher power. So I made the deals. I promised that if I went through this operation successfully, I would never, ever settle for less than best again. With that, I was operated on. And as you can see, I made it through. As I recuperated, I remembered the promise I made to the universe and to myself. Well, a deal is a deal. I had been given a chance. I had to make good on that deal. So, to the surprise of my then husband, after a couple of months and a lot of thought, I announced we'd be getting a divorce. It wasn't a question, and even though I had contributed well, I wanted and took nothing but my car and my clothes. I knew that I was entitled to more, but fighting for more would have left me in a place I didn't want to be. Negotiating with a man who really couldn't negotiate fairly, and with a man who I wanted to be my ex. But I felt the stuff that we would be arguing about was about money and things. I do have to tell you, my family and my friends thought I had really lost the plot. Well, I felt I could make money. I could buy or get the things I need. I would start again. I moved out, leaving all of the wonderful personal items that we really could have argued about. I decided that all of that was just so unimportant. I had a new life to live, and I lived it. Without being rude to others, I carefully made choices that mattered mainly to me. The people in my life, meaning my family and friends, were important. I made sure they knew it. I rented a home at first, and when I had enough money, meaning 4 years later, I bought a little house by the ocean. I had always wanted a little house by the ocean. Because I like nice, some of you who will get to know me know that I like nice, I continued to work really hard. I had to make enough money to afford what things I like. Again, important to remember, these were my choices. For good balance to the hard work, I played equally hard. I did what we're advised to do. Aim for the best, and you'll usually get close. I was careful about it. With every decision, I reviewed the choices. I don't like living with regret. One of the ways to avoid living with regret is to always think hard through the options and make your best choice. Your best choice will allow you to live your best life, however you define that best life. So why am I telling you this? Here's what's real. As human beings, whether we're dealing with life, the coronavirus, our work, whatever, we say and sometimes think we're doing our best. But are we? Dealing with COVID-19 and being in lockdown has given many people a chance to re-examine their priorities. It's almost a chance to start again. For me, it's like reliving being given that awful diagnosis. I'm asking you to not wait until you have a crisis. We're already in one. Don't wait until you're dealing with a death or a birth, New Year's or a birthday. The plus side of any crisis or of any day is that we're reminded that we have to continue taking care of ourselves, our family, and our friends who are important to us. There are plenty of times and plenty of reasons to take stock. The difference here is that you need to make the review of your life and your choices real. And the hardest thing, you need to do something about it, not just think about it. That applies to every single person who can hear my voice. The most important part of that, which I find is really hard for people to say here because you don't quite speak the way Americans speak, it means that you are the most important person in your life. If you take care of you, you'll find that naturally you will take care of the people around you. That does not mean you'll get everything you want, but it does mean you'll decide what you want and put all of your energy into getting it. Generally, if you get things right for you, you can't help but get things right for those around you. This is about putting your desires into real actions. So I need you to know I'm not talking about being selfish, but I am talking about being healthfully selfish. It means that you're the center of this. It is your life. That starts with you taking time to know what you want first. Take the time to figure out not only what you want, but who you are. Figure out what the picture of your best life really looks like. But then the hardest bit of this, go and get it. That means you have to decide whether you happen to be a powerful person or not. I always say that if someone tells me that they're not so powerful, I ask, why not? What's wrong with being powerful? Remember, we all define power in different ways, but we are all powerful. It's whether or not we choose to use our power. Do the work to be clear about what you want. You can be nice about it. You can be inclusive about it. You can decide whether you should tell friends or family or not. Figure out whether you're a controlling person or you're a person that likes to follow. Figure out whether you're a depressed person or not. Figure out if you really like you. If you're okay with whatever kind of person you are, that's great. But I gotta say, most healthy, high-impact people like you are never usually fully satisfied with who they are. Figure out what kind of ego you have. If you're completely egocentric, you know there's work for you to do. If you say something like, I have no ego, there's also work for you to do. No matter what your assessment of yourself, you need to learn to consider change and being hopeful. Now, what does that really mean? If we were to pull hope apart, hope is a combination of anger and courage. The anger bit is about usually being angry about the way things are. The courage bit is about things that you've decided should not stay the way they are. Remember, it's a battle. Your goal should be to have the courage bit overtake the anger bit. Remember that while we're breathing, we have the ability to change. But you do have to be willing to embrace the courage needed for change. You have to be willing to embrace hope. We do that by making sure we call it out. We need to say what we're hopeful for. You need to recognize your role in all of this. No matter what your situation, no matter what you think you want to do or are doing, you have a role. If you find that there's a stuck point, you don't know how to get from point A to point B, get to know different people around you. Figure out how they handle what you're grappling with. And remember, you start small. Starting small produces big differences. So thinking about all of this, I wanted to give you some of my own rules. They're not in priority order. All of these things, though, are important. I'm asking you or challenging you to do your own personal homework. Most of us take more time doing homework about the business, about our kids, about the car, but not usually ourselves. Take time for you. Learn about who you are, what you like, what you don't like, and what it is that's made you the way you are. Figure it out, because it's more important for you to know you than for anyone else to know you. When I don't like something or someone, which does happen, I try to figure out why. It's an opportunity for me to figure out if my dislike is valid or whether I need to work on that dislike. My job is to be my very best friend. It doesn't mean I need to like everyone or everything, but I do have to respect what I do, what I say, and why I've done it. You can't figure that out unless you know who you are and why. You need to be conscious about this. When you meet someone who's negative to you, or you're in a negative situation, you have an obligation to yourself to move away from that person or change that situation. It doesn't require an argument. It requires you to take action. You'll know if a person or situation is generally negative. You'll know that because when you're in their company or in whatever the situation is, it leaves you upset, angry, depressed, feeling badly. That's a sign that you need to see less of that person or you need to change the situation you're in. If you think that relationship or situation is worth saving, talk about it. But not everything is worth talking about. You can quietly just see less of that person, or you can quietly change the situation. It is something to be hopeful about. And remember, you're allowed to change your mind about someone or something. Just do it consciously. It's important to remember that when you take no action, which means you say nothing, usually because you're unsure of what to do, whether you like it or not, no action is an action. It is a decision. To those around you, your actions or your inactions, your voice or your silence is clear. Whether you intend it to be or not, you've made a decision. That decision is to do nothing. If that's your choice, do it consciously. Aim high, but remember how variable that could be. For the social phobic person, aiming high means agreeing to go to just one social event. For the extremely capable person, they will need to challenge themselves in a different, sometimes harder way. The point really is, challenge yourself. We're all better for creating, trying, and sometimes succeeding in our challenges. However, of course, expect some failures. That's life. Just don't let your failures stop you. Your failures help to mold you. They are important. I became a psychologist because in university, 100 years ago, I was told that because I had a lisp, I wouldn't be able to teach high school education. I wanted to be a teacher. A lisp meaning I said "fatje" instead of sausages. Well, I went to the speech club as I was required to do every Tuesday for over a year. I learned how to speak without a lisp. But I never went back to the teaching goal. After rethinking my future and my career, I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. Becoming a psychologist for me was the right decision. When we apply for a position or something and we don't get it, feel defeated for a while. You are only human. It is a letdown. But the work is in getting up and trying again. You know enough about business folks who were fired from jobs and kept going and became really successful. Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, there are lots of them out there. The message for you is that you deserve to keep pushing you. Now, while everyone says they don't judge, we all do. Use that skill, but apply the judgment to yourself. That means judge you, just to move you from where you should be to where you want to be. If, as you judge you, you say, I don't like it, take the time to change it. If you're not cemented to what you've done, so just change it so that as you judge you, you like your own outcome. If you judge your words and your actions and you like them, then celebrate that, because you're in a special place. The biggest thing for most of us, no matter what our situation, learn to not make things worse. There are times when voicing an opinion is the right thing to do. There are times when learning to speak, even under the guise of being honest, is just not helpful. Unless it's an accident, nothing ever just happens. The words I really have learned to dislike a lot, well, it just happened. That's an unconscious choice. That's usually what I'm told, usually in therapy sessions, when I'm asking, well, why did you have that affair? Why did such and such happen? I'm usually told, it just happened. Well, for your own sake, don't let it just happen. Make conscious choices, because nothing just happens except accidents. No matter how hard it is, if you make a conscious choice, it can't just happen. Doing your best means you can't allow yourself to have regrets. If you've tried your hardest, that really is the most that anyone can ask of you, and it really is the best you can do. Then it's a conscious choice, even if you decide later on that it's a wrong choice. Be thoughtful and kind. You can say negative things really nicely. You can set limits in really nice ways. You can make your point without yelling or being demeaning. I have learned to be really nice when I send somebody to jail. I'm holding them responsible and accountable for their actions, but I'm giving them the consequence of their actions. Let's face facts. Everyone who commits a crime, they really know the consequence. So I can afford to do it nicely. It is very weird, though, when a person who's been committed to jail looks at you and says, thank you for saying that so nicely. I'm off to jail now. Compromise is the art of knowing that you and the person you're compromising with will both end up with moments or situations that you like and dislike. It's a really hard balancing act, but if you care about the person or the situation you're compromising about or with, it's worth finding a compromise. When I make a decision, I think about my options fairly quickly, and I come to a decision. My husband, Jim, seems to take forever. I can't understand why he ruminates and ruminates and ruminates about decisions, but that's his way. My job is to not change him. We all know the only people we can change are ourselves. But it makes me crazy. And to not make me crazy, I just let him know exactly what I'm going to do, and I leave that with him until he decides. And of course, because I've told you about Jim making me crazy, there's plenty I do that makes him crazy. When something's wrong, I need to talk and talk and talk about it. He doesn't. I figure that's the male-female difference. It could be the American-English difference, or any other thing that I want to hold responsible for that. But no matter what, it's our reality. Our job has been to figure out how to find a compromise that's okay for both of us. So in this instance, I don't want to ignore the issue, so I talk less about it. And because he knows he needs to join in, he talks a little bit more about whatever it is. And one last thing. One of the important things about living your best life, you must find the joy. You must celebrate. You know the phrase, celebrate well and often. A celebration doesn't take a lot of money. A celebration requires you to think about whatever it is and give yourself or others a pat on the back. It's an important skill. It's a skill that I found when I first moved here was not well done in Britain. Obviously, you're learning to do it better. I find Shakespeare really quite complex, and I would never usually say he's a simple person or gave simple directions. However, I found a simple phrase that seems to fit what I'm talking about. Shakespeare said, "Suit the action to the word and the word to the action." Beautifully simple, beautifully powerful, beautifully useful. However, there are many tips that you can get on the net. So if you're stuck, go find them. Just look up motivation. Just look up how to help me do whatever it is. They're there. So it's over to you. Create your own power. As long as you're breathing, you have things to work on and hopefully gain. Live your own priorities. That means you have to know your own priorities. Your future is begging you to take control and keep going. Take control of yourself. Take control of your life. Take control of you. Make this life your very best life. You're worth the time and energy. Thank you for letting me talk to you. How's my timing?
Thank you, Marcia. That was absolutely wonderful. I'm sure I can speak for everyone who was watching you. I was transfixed by that. Fabulous. I've seen you speak before. Very personal journey, and such humility as well in the way you tell those stories. So I for one will be going back to rewatch that when it goes up on YouTube, because I think there's so much wonderful advice in there. So thank you for sharing that with us. Hopefully people will have taken a lot of inspiration and will make some time to think of themselves in the way that you have suggested. Now, timing-wise, we have run over a little bit, I'm afraid.
Sorry.
But do not apologise, because it was absolutely wonderful to hear that. I could not have begun to thought of cutting you off, but there was just one question in the chat, which I will ask very, very quickly. Do you think this approach has made you more successful in your professional life?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not just my professional life. Everything about me is more successful, and I'm a nicer person, to be perfectly honest. So yes, but again, one of the differences I find is that it still requires me to feel sometimes a little narcissistic, because it is about me. But in all honesty, the outcome is not a narcissistic outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Fantastic. And I love your words about choices. I was having a very similar conversation with my two kids on their schoolwork before we started this session. Choices are what we all have, and choices are what can make or break our lives. So thank you again, Marcia. Very much appreciated. There's been some wonderful feedback in the chat, so I know there's a lot of people that have taken something from your words. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
So we will move on, and we are going to go into the Shadow Board update from Jason and Adam.
Okay, so just a quick 5 minutes from me. So people don't know me, I'm Jason Savage. I'm the new chair of the Shadow Board, and I'm just going to give a quick update on kind of our structure and how it's changed in the last sort of month or so, and some activities that we're currently engaged with. So just over a month ago, this is what the Shadow Board looked like. Ruth was our chair, and then we had all the members that you can see on the screen now. The Shadow Board's kind of been, it was, for those who don't know, it's been set up since 2018. It's moved around a bit in its membership, but this is what you might have seen, before COVID kind of kicked off. This is what we looked like in terms of coming to member meetings, etc. We set ourselves 4 themes to work to. Now, we've had these themes for about 12 months. However, because we've kind of had a bit of a slower period, we've been able to take a step back and develop them a bit further. So all our activities that we do for the Shadow Board is under these 4. We've got business collaboration, develop the next generation, better place to live and work, and diversity inclusion. All of them kind of fit with the ethos of the cluster, but allow us to sort of focus our activity so that we're not going off completely and doing completely random things. Although we're the Shadow Board, we don't sit in the shadow of the main board. We kind of operate kind of as our own entity with the board in kind of collaboration. So having those themes really sets us up well. Because we've had this time to step back, and with me coming in as chair, I like to set a bit more of a structure to the board, as well as we've lost a couple of people. We've lost Ruth, and we've lost Rob and Alex. So because of that, you might have seen that we did some recruitment. So we've now got 2 new members, and this is what our Shadow Board is looking like now. So what we did, we set leads for each of our themes. So we've got Tom, Adam, Charlotte and Sophie as leads. And then we've got kind of support people in there, Mohammed, Sarah, and then Rihanna and Jordan are our new members that have just been appointed just this week. So welcome to those as well. Those 2 as well. They're in the chat. So of us, it's not a hierarchy thing. So it's not like I'm everyone's boss. We kind of do sit at a level playing field, and so that everyone's ideas are just as important. But obviously, with that structure, it gives us as members looking into us who kind of you should go to if you've got things that you want to talk to us about on various themes, and also when we're working internally together, we've got that kind of view. I think it's good as well that we've got a good mix of companies represented on the Shadow Board, from obviously bigger supply chain tier 2s, but obviously some smaller companies as well. Gives us that diversity of thought, and really that ability to speak to the young professionals within our membership, to give them a voice in terms of cluster activity, and also their professional and personal development. A couple of things, ongoing activities, just picked a couple there. We obviously continue with our member engagement. We really want to start working on some more workshops, focus groups, bringing those young people from your companies into the cluster and making them more aware of the stuff that's going on, and getting them more involved. Podcasts, which Adam's going to touch on shortly, so I won't talk about that. Young Professional Development Guide, which is something that's been in the works for a while, recognising that particularly in smaller companies, it might be more difficult for employers to kind of give young people that sort of structure for young professional development. So that guide's really going to help with that. No One Left Behind, which I think Ivan's going to speak on in his bit, but looking at how we maximise the opportunities for the young as we come out of COVID, and kind of recognising that young people are going to be disproportionately affected by the economic impacts of COVID-19. And then Pride and Inclusion campaigns, which is something Sophie and Sarah will be working on quite a bit more as we go forward. As obviously it's been a big thing, but I think there's been quite a few things recently that have highlighted it that we really need to get behind. So that's really it, just a quick short update. Really would encourage anybody to get in touch with us, particularly younger people within your organisation if they want to work with us on various projects. And we just want to, as we start to get things rolling again, as everyone goes back to work, it'd be really good to start those conversations and get our activities back up and running. Thank you. So I hand over to Adam.
Yep, morning everyone. Mine's just a very, very, very short 30 seconds piece. As a Shadow Board, we're looking to do a series of podcasts with members talking about their COVID response, be it if they've had certain challenges they've faced or even opportunities. So we're looking for it's been affected by COVID. If your business had to close down, and it's sort of how you're planning to get back to work once you're able to do so safely. If your business stayed open throughout COVID, how did you manage this? What sort of measures did you put in place to deal with that? And then also, perhaps if you've benefited actually or sort of evolved your business from COVID, and sort of what have you managed to do differently? What innovation have you come up with during that time? So yeah, my contact details there, get in touch, and one of us can get in touch with you, and then we can organise a nice chat like this over Zoom or Teams or something. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. Jason, can you just very quickly remind us how people can get in contact if there's younger people within the cluster who want to get involved with some of the activities the Shadow Board are doing? There's the email address on screen. I guess that's the best place for people to reach out to you. That's
the best way. So obviously they're all our email addresses of the leads and mine. But if you wanted to just send a general inquiry to us, or somebody wants to get in touch, it's best to go on the bottom email address there, which is the group one we've all got access to, shadowboard@becbusinesscluster.co.uk.
Brilliant, and congratulations to Rhiannon and Jordan for joining on Shadow Board. Okay, great. Thank you, Jason. We are going to move into the formal part of today's session. So I'm going to bring Tom on board, and let me just pop up the slides that will summarise the next steps of the meeting. So yeah, we're into the more formal part, and this is really where the AGM kicks off. So Tom, are you there? Ask to unmute.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, so I get to, as legal director, I get to kind of deal with and officiate over the formal bit, which is usually a bit easier when we're all there in person. Obviously, with us doing it via Zoom, it's going to be slightly different, but as we need to vote on things, I'll kind of tell you how we're going to do it at the time. But fundamentally, we're going to hear from Ivan with his chairman's statement. We're going to hear from Andrew in relation to financial memberships and money and finances. Then we're going to have a vote on just receiving the financial statements that Andrew presents. Vote, hopefully, although I'm not trying to sway anyone, to approve Andrew's appointment as finance director and treasurer. And then we'll announce the results of the directors' poll, and then vote to approve or not the directors that have been nominated by the members with the highest votes. So just very quickly, Andrew, next slide. Just as a very quick review of last year. So we approved the receipt of the financial statements last year. We approved my appointment as legal director, having been co-opted by the board, and then Peter, Charlotte and Diane were also approved as directors and formally appointed. There was no other business. So without further ado, I'm going to actually hand over now to Ivan to do your chairman's statement.
I'm probably going to disappoint a few people now, because this is not going to be a chairman's statement. This is going to hopefully be a conversation. Given that we're doing this in July, given that we are in the situation that we're currently in, it didn't feel right to me to do too much about looking back, as we might do in previous years, in terms of celebrating things that have happened. And it felt more appropriate to use this time to look forward and think about reset. So I wanted to share with you some work that's been going on behind the scenes. It's only been going on at a relatively superficial level, because of course none of this happens without the membership, the whole membership, and then the membership working together. So it feels like this is the ideal time to have this discussion. So what I'm sharing is not a fait accompli at all. It's a conversation. Hopefully, it's a conversation where at a high level you think that we're sort of thinking about the right things, and then the conversation perhaps can lead into some healthy challenge or some sort of views on how we take things forward. So what do we actually mean here? So BECBC 2020 reset. Very, very early doors, literally before the doors were closed on the pandemic, we got together a group within the board and said, we're going to need to do things differently quite quickly. We can't just continue as though the world hasn't changed, because that's not what our members need. So we went into, a very sort of almost like a sort of a bunker mentality, sort of war mentality on the front foot. What do we need to do? Quickly engage on the digital stuff, which, the team have been absolutely fantastic on. You as members have been amazing in the way that you've engaged. We're now starting to look forward. We are facing into what is very likely going to be a significant recession. All of the variety of things that come socially, personally, etc., with the social distancing that'll be required, and the fact that we're still living with a global pandemic, and who knows what's yet to come. So we as an organisation want to start looking forward, and we want to start doing the right things. And when I say we as an organisation, I sort of mean the board, but I actually don't. I mean we as a whole collective group, which is where the business cluster really comes into its own. So what are we talking about? No one left behind. Why is that smack bang in the middle for a business organisation? And why doesn't it say maximise the profit? Essentially, for me, this is about why you would be a part of a broader group, and the fact that we're all in this together. We're all facing significant challenges together, and yet we are disproportionately impacted for many different reasons. Some reasons are a greater widening of a gap between haves and have-nots that already existed, and in other cases purely just because of the type of business somebody either owns or works in, they find themselves potentially with no clear future. Can their business operate successfully, continue to move forward? Is it possible for them to navigate through some of the challenges that actually face them? So we felt it really, really important to reflect on that and think about the fact that this impacts people in different ways. I will very quickly touch on these sort of 5 areas. So when we're talking about opportunities, it's that continued focus on helping members secure opportunities from the bigger companies, but also with each other as well. There's the inward investment piece, which I will touch on in a following slide. I've decided I wanted to get that out there. You may have seen some stuff recently on social media about some bigger opportunities that might be available for this county. And sticky pound, and what do we mean by that? Well, there's already a fairly healthy chunk of economic opportunity that already flows through this area. We're very lucky that we've got anchor institutions here. But how can we make the most of that? How can we work with those institutions? Workforce loyalty, people that are furloughed, people that are potentially redundant or have been made redundant. What more can we do? Is it acceptable for us that we leave those people behind, or are there more things that we can do to help there? Digital adoption, it's been proven, hasn't it, in this pandemic, the absolute vital requirement to have better digital capability. I mean, we're invested in our own website as a result of that, and Hazel and Andrew have done fantastic things to bring the cluster to life digitally. This will expand in terms of other companies and their needs and products and services for the business. So what more can we do there? Early careers, which Jason's already mentioned, in terms of maximising the opportunity for the young. This generation possibly have one of the hardest job markets to face into that there's ever been. And as a county that has a aging population, that's not good for business, it's not good for the community. And finally, on the third sector, recognising the vulnerability potentially of social enterprises and charities, which we really need. They are a core part of what we do. They're not just an add-on and a tick in the box. So what more can be done? And when I talk about working with these organisations, in these priorities, what I'm not talking about is BECBC running the whole show. What I'm talking about is working with, supporting, getting behind. If people are doing things in these areas already, I feel that BECBC might be able to help, put a shoulder behind it, support, whether that be the core BECBC or other members. And absolutely, this is important that we can do more here. So it's not a takeover bid in this context. It's about doing more to help, achieving more together, and looking what we can do to get increased member ownership. A lot said in that, and I did say it was a conversation, so I'll very quickly get my next slide out of the way so we can open things up. I debated whether showing you this because it's early doors, and then I thought about some of the wise words from Marcia, and I thought, yeah, what the hell. So behind the scenes with the authorities, the council authorities on the coast, if you would, so Barrow, Allerdale and Copeland, and with those MPs and the MP from Carlisle as well, we are working on the potential for some form of an entity that links community, investor and HMG, so government. And the driver behind this, because I won't go into massive detail, is very similar to what we saw in the London 2020 Olympics in East London, where essentially that community formed their own organisation to contract with the Olympics, to make sure that the Olympics became transformative for their area. We may have an opportunity in this region, one generational type opportunity amidst all of the sort of crisis that we're in. There's a potentially bigger crisis, which is energy and the government's need to meet net zero. And that potentially has some big investment type opportunities for an area like us in both renewables and nuclear. So I just wanted to let you know about that, because of course this is our cluster, and this is not just sort of one person's vision. This should be something that we all seek to engage with and get involved with. So Andrew, if you can open up, I don't know what we're like for questions, but I don't know how long I took even, but let's get it open up for questions, please.
Yeah, we've not had any questions submitted, but if there is anybody who wishes to offer a contribution based on what you've heard there from Ivan, or any questions around that vision for what the cluster shape might look like over the coming months and how it adapts into the new world that we live in, then please feel free to make yourself known in the chat. Or if you wish, you can unmute your microphone. Obviously, it's difficult. I can't see everybody, but you can unmute your microphone and chip in. So, Jutta, you have a question you want to ask about the concept of no one being left behind.
Yeah. So, in light of Marcia's speech, and also in light of some conversations we've had, and also in light of your point 3, I think, on the first slide. I was just wondering why you wouldn't put achieving more together in the middle of your circle.
Yeah, that's equally a valid statement. And to be frank, it could be something which evolves in that direction. This has been something. So we had what we called a trusted minds group. People used to call things like that brains trusts or greybeards or whatever. So wise individuals from different places. So Paul Foster, CEO of Sellafield, was Hazel Blair, Stephen Morgan, folks like that, Marcia. And actually the sort of feeling around that group at the time was that level of empathy, if you would, that actually a cluster grouping would actually feel. So it's very much about thinking about those that might be hardest hit, those companies and businesses that might be hardest hit. And that's very much a reflection of the feeling, maybe the depths of lockdown, Jutta. And it's quite possible that as we move forward, it's kind of one that morphs and changes with the sort of needs of the time. But a long way of saying it's, as in my view, as equally a valid statement as the other.
Yeah, okay, I get that.
However, can I just add though, because that is such a good point, you may very well find that in the narrative behind some of this, because obviously this is just a quick shot of what it is, but I think in the narrative it would probably be useful to make that kind of statement. So good job for bringing it up.
Okay, anybody else?
I said a question from Simon Schenitzer on the client entity. Yes, indeed, Simon. So anything like this can't be a breakaway splinter thing. It has to be complementary with. So conversations are ongoing. The work that's been done so far with EDF and Rolls-Royce has been across those different groupings. But, you know, being frank and recognise that I'm being recorded here, you know, these are organisations that are joining our dots for us. We're not joining our own dots right now. We're not deciding what's important to us and understanding what our priorities are and understanding how we might socially contract with organisations like that.
Okay, Sarah Glass, do you want to ask your question? Your question about early careers rather. Are you there, Sarah? Sarah's asking
yes.
what? Oh, there you go.
Yes, just to clarification on early careers, kind of what we mean by that. Do we will that include secondary and primary age, or just people starting out in their early career journey?
I'll actually put the question back to you, Sarah, because you guys do so much in this area. What are your thoughts? What do you think it should, in terms of that focus from employers and businesses? What do you think the focus should be in terms of what's most needed?
Well, if we're talking about no one left behind and kind of nurturing the kind of aspirations of young people, then that really kind of, especially with a lot of the long-term kind of contracts and things at Sellafield, I think we've got a duty to kind of be looking at really primary age right the way through and creating that kind of longitudinal relationship with young people, which I know is a work area and a priority for the left as well. So that fits into that. So I would say primary right the way through a young person's kind of educational journey through to that kind of post 16 into their into their careers.
Yeah, not something I could argue with.
It was just because I just wanted to, just to clarify, I suppose, because obviously there's been some great work on the Business Schools Collaboration Project. And I just wondered what the focus might be there in terms of the group kind of coming together. So what that early careers means, is that broad and up for discussion between the members, or is that something that you've already kind of discussed and got a clear idea on?
No, as I said, this is starting the conversation early, and I know sometimes that's kind of challenging for folks because sort of sometimes people crave detail. I've kind of seen this with the government. You sort of crave a plan, and then you want to throw eggs at it in terms of how we sort of all are. But in this sense, it was about trying to put something out there early to see whether or not those priority areas made sense, how people felt about them, how they would want to shape them perhaps. And that's a particular area where I think there's a lot happening anyway. I mean, you guys do some amazing work in that area, what you've done with your Future Leaders Forum, etc. So it's kind of like, how do we play in that in the right way? Whereas there are some other areas, I think, that are completely blank spaces, where we decide as an organisation, how do we fill that blank space? Should we fill that blank space? Is there something we need to do? Should we form a partnership? So I'll take an example, Sticky Pound, not something that there are any sort of major things going on that are having great outcomes right now. But there are some initiatives. There are things like Lee Greer's has set up about Cumbria's Me, as an example, a website that promotes people sort of spending with each other. So I think there are some areas where our maturity, and when I say our, I mean the region, is much greater. And there are other areas where it's great. So this is about how we play into those focus areas.
Okay, I'm looking at the time. This is clearly a discussion that could go on for some time, but I think we do perhaps need to move on to the next stage, which is listening to Andrew Clitheroe just give us an update on the financials and membership. Ivan, is there a particular channel that you would want to try and continue that conversation at this stage? Or is that subject for separate sessions, perhaps in smaller groups?
Yeah, I don't want to assume I'm still going to be involved in a few minutes' time, but I think essentially this should become the day job somewhat. So there's an opportunity to tweak that. It took me 10 minutes to do that PowerPoint slide, so I won't be too offended if it changes. So this is, this should become the day job for the organisation. So I would like it to be a big part of the conversation moving forward on a real practical level for those of us that are still involved. Email, engage, set up a meeting, let's start talking. If it's the way people want to see this go.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. I'm going to move on, and I'll pop up your slides now, Andrew.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, everybody. By way of an introduction, just to say it's a bit of an honour to present these accounts to you a little later and in very different circumstances than we would have planned and hoped, but we got there. So in terms of me, I'm not sure how many of you know me, but I'm Andrew Clitheroe, and I took over the finance director treasurer role from the cluster from Alison in March, just as the world's changed, about 3 days before lockdown. So there's been a lot going on. So leading into that and from that, thank you to Alison again for her support for the cluster and its members over the years. The team at Dodds for their help in preparing these accounts alongside Alison, and our very own Hazel for all the work over the last year in pulling this together. Okay, Andrew, so moving on, just an outline of what we're going to go through. You're all going to be incredibly thankful that the finance bit is brief, to the point, and let's just move on. So next slide, Andrew. Okay, so this is a summary of the accounts for the year ended January 20. It's a very, very summarised set of accounts. So, more detailed information is, of course, available if anybody wants a bit of homework. So if you just give me a shout directly or through Hazel, we'll provide whatever you want, as well as any questions you've got. Okay, so getting into this, turnover, the 238 figure at the top of the page there represents full turnover for the year ended January, which is clearly down on the previous year, but core turnover in terms of membership revenue was slightly up on the previous year. The gap just represents that in the year ended 20, there was no real significant event, no real significant additional revenue stream, other than we're going to get to in a moment through the Global Reach event. But in the previous year, we had the awards evening, which is it's a key additional revenue stream for the cluster. But below that, in terms of administration expenses, you can see that the administration expenses reduced in line with the reduction in turnover, which means that our cost base remained broadly in line year on year. In fact, we're able to slightly reduce the overall deficit position in the year, which is the 17,300 figure, third from the bottom. So basically, we made less of a loss last year than we had done in the previous year. So in spite of no significant event, we did, as a group, manage to control cost to ensure that the loss was in control and was less than in the previous year. And the bottom, the reserves brought forward and carried forward. That just reflects the strength of the cluster. It remains in a strong position. It has a healthy balance sheet. And when we were looking at this back in January, February, we had no foresight of what was coming down the road and the storm we were expected to weather. So, we were in a good position, and we are in a good position. Next slide, Andrew. Right. Okay, so getting into slightly more detail, membership numbers currently around 295. That's broadly in line with the year before, might be a couple different, and obviously more are being added all the time. So that just supports that, you know, we didn't have the additional events as much in the year, but you know, the core business is strong and the core turnover is strong, as well as the membership revenue. Our turnover was another 67,000 from events such as the AGM we would have liked to have had, and we would have had at this time last year, which would have brought in additional income for the cluster, and other events such as the BSCP, workshops, and of course Global Reach, which is an independent event, generated income for the cluster of £15,000, and it ran at a surplus. So you know, these are great additional revenue streams, which allow us to do all the other stuff we want to do without increasing, membership prices fundamentally. And it's worth mentioning that BSCP project did break even in the year, and it's budgeted to do it again this year. Go on, next slide, Andrew. Right, so this is really the more important bit as we start to look forward. It's worth mentioning that we very much have a pre and a post-COVID budget for this year. As I'm sure many of the member businesses had to, we immediately had to reassess our budget and its assumptions March, April, and we reforecast based upon the new world and what we didn't know what it was going to look like, but we had to make some assumptions. So what that means is, and point two there, we immediately prioritised the service to the members and the support for the team. It means the original budget and its assumptions were immediately obsolete, and we prioritised what we had to do in the first days of COVID, ensuring we were fit to support the e-events, the signposting services, all the support we've offered. So that was the original priority, just to hold the priorities for the members. Give me a sec. Just making sure that wasn't a question for me, sorry. Then we moved on from the early days of COVID to where we are now. And this is now, again, I'm sure this mirrors what everybody's doing in their individual businesses. It was the point where we actually had the opportunity to put our heads up, look for the year ahead, and look at what we wanted to do. And this dovetails with the conversation Ivan's having around what we will look like in that post-pandemic world and how we are fit to deliver as much value as possible in these incredibly challenging circumstances. So again, what does that mean, Andrew? So what that means is that the budget for the cluster and its activities will look incredibly different this year. It means we have to put aside a budget to support e-events, a lack of any physical events, and a lack of any of the significant awards type events we would have it in a normal year. It means this year we have prioritised some investment in the website. We recognise this was the right time to make such an investment, because that's the way we will support the cluster and its members. And fundamentally, it means we preserve the financial stability of the cluster. So we are placed as a group to support the members post-pandemic. So it means internally we reassessed our cost base. We've looked at where we're spending cash. We've looked at, are these the right places? And we've looked at what our priorities need to be going forward. Okay. Right. So that's it. Brief, without dwelling too much on the previous year, because we recognise the year we're in now is incredibly different, and it's going to be incredibly difficult 2 days, right? So that's where we are. The point we have to make around the directors are satisfied with the accuracy of the accounts, the way they've been prepared. And again, if you've got any questions for me, please don't hesitate to give me a shout.
Thank you, Andrew. So Tom, back across to you now.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And Andrew, does anybody have any questions on the accounts or the statements for Andrew?
We have nothing in the chat.
Okay. Right. Okay. In which case, just a couple of formalities. I know that we've got a quorum because I know how many members are currently logged in. For anybody that, I'm sure everybody has read it, but the meeting, the notice, formal notice of the meeting was emailed out to members and posted on the website on the 15th of June. So the right notice was given for this meeting. The way I'm going to do voting, because of the slight technological constraints, normally, you'll all be aware, we normally put our hands up and blue slips or orange slips or whatever it may be in a delegates. We can't do that here. I know that everybody apart from one person is a paid up member. So, you know, that makes it easier. So what I'm going to do, unless anybody has any significant objections, is for each vote that I'm going to put to everybody, I'm going to open up my chat and I'm going to invite anybody who wants to say no to not approve it, to just pop into the chat to me if you want it to be confidential. And then I'll effectively count those no's up. And then if the majority are yeses, I'm going to take that as approval for each motion. So the first one is to approve and accept the financial statements that Andrew's just delivered for the year ended 31st of January 2020. So again, I'm just going to open up my chat. Now, if anybody wants to vote against accepting those statements, then please do so now. Okay, that wasn't an awkward silence at all. so that's fine. I'm therefore going to declare that motion as formally passed by the necessary majority. The next formal vote is to approve Andrew's appointment. So certain roles on the board can actually be co-opted by the directors themselves rather than included in the general online voting or the voting for directors. They tend to be specialist roles. So my legal director role was done that way. Andrew as treasurer was done that way. So what we did is when Alison announced that she was stepping down, we went through a selection process, inviting applications from suitably qualified people, and Andrew was selected. So I think he's done a great job, obviously, getting to grips with everything at a particularly difficult and challenging time. But formally, the directors therefore recommend that Andrew's appointment as a director be ratified by the members. So again, I'm just going to give 10 seconds. If anybody wants to say no to that, then just pop it in chat now. Okay, thanks for that. So having totted up the no responses in chat, that is also therefore approved by the necessary majority. And then finally is the announcing the results of the actual vote for directors. So again, what we've done this year is we've actually run this as an email poll over the last 48 hours. There's 3 positions available, and either due to rotation or retirement of directors. So Ivan and Sean put themselves forward to be re-elected following retirement by rotation. Ruth Selleck also put herself forward together with Kevin Mannion from Spence Group and Cherry Tingle from ETC. So having totted everything up, I can now announce that the 3 directors with the highest vote were Ivan Baldwin, Sean Beattie, and Ruth Selleck. So congratulations to the 3 of you. Just want to echo something that Ivan said, which is thanks very much to the other 2 for putting yourself forward at a public vote. Yeah, obviously it was actually a close run thing as well, I hasten to add. So just on that again, having decided the numbers and also including the proxy votes, thanks Dominic for setting that out. I'm now going to propose that the members formally ratify those 3 appointments to the board. So again, if anybody wants to object, then you've got 10 seconds just to say no in the chat function. Okay, thanks everybody. So I'm now going to just confirm that motion also approved by the necessary majority. That concludes the formal bit, unless anybody's got any questions or wants to raise any other business. No. Okay. So that concludes the formal, slightly technical bit of the AGM. Thanks everybody for voting as well. It's been a really good response doing it by email. So there's every chance that we might do things in a similar way in the future, just to make it administratively easier in advance. So I'll now hand you back to Andrew Armitage to continue with that sharing bit.
All right, thank you, Tom. Thank you, everybody, for casting votes and making feelings known through the chat if you did. Thanks, Tom, for going through that. Right, we're going to move on to the networking session now. We've caught up a bit on time, so I'm going to open up the breakout rooms for 10 minutes, and those are going to be, by and large, between groups of 4 and 6. I've pre-allocated some people at random just to try and make that process a little bit quicker and smoother, but I'm going to open up the breakout rooms for 10 minutes. If you don't immediately see a request, it's because you have perhaps not been pre-allocated. Just depends on when you registered and when I set these breakout rooms up. But we'll go into that 10-minute session for networking starting from now, and then you'll be brought back to the main room. I think we've probably got everybody back now. So thank you for taking part in the networking session. Too short as always. I know that's I think that's probably the most common bit of feedback that we get from the breakout sessions. We were obviously due to finish at 12, so it is just 11:59. I'm conscious that there will be people that need to go elsewhere. There are other sessions that do happen from time to time, so do keep a lookout for emails that come from Hazel in case there are other events that planned which allow a bit of networking and so on. So hopefully you found that helpful. Right, that pretty much concludes today's session. So thank you for everyone for your contributions. As I said, the session has been recorded, and it will be going up onto the YouTube channel on the website as well by the end of the week. Let me just find my final share. For those of you that are going back to work or perhaps looking for suppliers, it's been mentioned a few times today, just looking within the cluster, please do consider looking at other members within the cluster if you are looking for furniture, screens, hand dispensers, PPE, that type of thing. There are plenty of members who are in that space and may well be able to offer some help. Similarly, if you are looking for professional services, if my button moves on correctly, there we go. We have some we have professional services providers within the cluster as well, so so please do take a time to look through the membership on the website if you are looking to buy services or as you look to prepare to go back to work. We'd love to get your feedback on today's session, as we always do. If you can anonymously go to menti.com and drop in the code 396338. That would be very much appreciated. We can capture any feedback from today's meeting. It's anonymous and takes just a couple of minutes to do. Finally, Ivan, do you want to just close out the meeting with a few final words?
Thanks, Andrew. And yeah, it's sort of, you said pretty much everything there, but just to reinforce that, thanks to everybody who took part, and thanks to everybody who contributed, and for all of you for keeping engaged. We will keep the conversation going on looking forward and the reset, and really keen for anybody to engage. So some people were chatting to me directly in the instant messages. Talk to me or any of the other board members. We will be really keen to do that. On a sort of a final point, to those that put themselves forward for the vote, big respect. It's not the easiest thing, especially in this sort of context as well, where you're looking at a screen full of people that are, you know, kind of deciding whether or not you'll join. You're all doing it as volunteers, so it is gratefully received and greatly appreciated. So thank you very much for that. Look out for each other, look out for yourselves, keep safe and well, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care, everybody.
Okay, thanks, Ivan. We will see you at another event in the future. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.